She threw herself on me and I just couldn't say no. I guess I'm just that popular. But man, young women are the best. Never thought she'd get pregnant so quickly though, but hey, we're still family, right? Not like I plan on taking her away from my son. But we'll probably end up living together, so I'm looking forward to what's lying ahead. It took a moment to understand the words of Michael, my husband, talking on the phone with a friend. I didn't know what it was about, but the pale face of our son, Paul, in front of me gave it all away. What? You got to be kidding me. Does this mean what I think it means? Paul muttered, without seeking confirmation from anyone. I was left speechless by his words. But we couldn't continue living without knowing the truth. After learning everything, Paul plotted his revenge. I decided to fully support him in sending Michael straight to hell. I'm Sophia. Currently 46 years old. Living with my husband Michael, our eldest son Paul, and our daughter Lily. It's the four of us. I'm currently working part-time in an administrative role at a local company. I've been working for this company since graduating high school, took a break for childbirth and raising my kids, but started working again once the kids didn't need as much attention. I have good relationships at work and a happy family life. It's a perfectly ordinary life, but I've come to feel it's the happiest thing at my age. If there's one complaint in my life, it would be about my husband, Michael. Michael is 50 this year. Unlike me, he's an active type who seeks excitement, always saying, "I'd suffocate staying at home all the time." He's always loved going out and has many hobbies. When the kids were little, he'd take them fishing, camping, hiking, and we even played golf together. Michael, always with the family, seemed like the ideal dad from the outside, and was even envied by others. But what's seen from the outside isn't everything. While curious, Michael also gets bored very easily. He's the type who starts by looking the part at anything he does. Expensive fishing rods, camping gear, golf equipment. Every new hobby meant spending hundreds of dollars on gear, only to stop using them after a few times. And they would never be used again. Dad, I want to go fishing again. Dad, I want to go camping. Even if the kids begged, once he got bored, he wouldn't listen to their requests. What? I'm already done with that stuff. With those words, it was over. He might have seemed like a good dad to others, but Michael was just doing what he wanted. The kids were not really joining him. He was dragging all of us along. Eventually, the kids realized that too. All right, this summer vacation, let's all go get our diving license. Eventually, when Michael would suggest something, no thanks. You'll just quit when it gets fun. And getting gear for all four of us costs money, especially when we'll just stop using it soon anyway. That's why we stopped going along with his suggestions. I think the kids have a point. I feel the same way. But Michael just gets mad at them. What's the deal? I thought it'd be nice for us all to do something together. He complains in such a way that you can't tell who's supposed to be the adult. When Lily, our youngest, became a middle schooler, Michael truly stopped getting any attention from the kids. But that didn't mean Michael calmed down. What he started next was gambling. Compared to his past hobbies, starting gambling didn't require much upfront money. And he'd probably get bored of it soon anyway. If he went alone on his days off without dragging the kids along, I actually found it convenient. I didn't know how long this new hobby would last, but I decided to just watch over it. Sophia, listen, I won $1,000 today. Aren't I amazing? Luckily, Michael never suffered major losses. Sometimes he'd win $1,000, other times $300, or even $50. The amounts varied, but it seemed he mostly won. $1,000? That's incredible. Makes working feel stupid, right? He'd joke about his hobby like that. But after getting hooked on gambling for about 6 months, Michael stopped talking about winning. Lately, I haven't heard about any wins. Not going well? If I asked, he'd brag, of course not. I'm a genius. I keep winning every time I go. It's just a hassle to report it. Plus, it's my pocket money. Well, I had my concerns, but he was serious about his job. As long as he was using his own spending money and kept it within reason, there wasn't much I could say. It's not like I wasn't worried, but nothing has lasted a year with him. I thought he'd get bored soon enough. However, contrary to my expectations, Michael didn't stop gambling. He even made friends, continuing to indulge in gambling every weekend a year later. As I was growing frustrated with such Michael, one day, something happened while I was shopping at the supermarket. When I tried to pay with a card for our living expenses, the clerk told me, "I'm sorry, but the payment isn't going through." Thinking the magnetic strip was damaged, I quickly pulled out my own card. "Sorry, can we use this one instead?" And paid without issue. The card for living expenses was a family card issued in Michael's name, with withdrawals from his account. So, I had to talk to him about it that night. "The card didn't work at the supermarket today. Maybe the magnetic strip's bad? Can you handle the reissuing?" I handed the card to Michael. But days passed without any action from Michael. Suspecting something, I called the company, but they said they couldn't discuss it with anyone but Michael. While waiting for the reissue using my own card, I noticed a letter from the card company. Thinking Michael had taken care of it without telling me, I opened it, assuming it was the new card, without checking with Michael. But the contents of the letter shocked me. "Couldn't withdraw from the account? What does that mean?" It was a demand letter asking for a deposit into the account. The account was where Michael's salary was supposed to go. It was unthinkable that there wouldn't be enough for a withdrawal. I rushed to the bank to check the balance. To my horror, there was only $300 left. There were multiple withdrawals from the ATM using the card. No doubt about it. It was Michael's doing. Suppressing the rage that threatened to overwhelm me, I returned home. And that day, when Michael came home, I confronted him right away. "What were you thinking? What's this all of a sudden? Don't play dumb. There's hardly any balance left. How are we supposed to get by this month?" Michael laughed it off as if to dodge the question. Just lost a bit, so I borrowed some. It's not like I touched the savings, so it shouldn't matter much, right?" And he had the nerve to say it so nonchalantly. I was furious with Michael's carefree attitude. It wasn't that the card was demagnetized. It was just disabled, which is why it couldn't be used. Michael knew that, so he didn't bother to get it reissued. Even if he had told me honestly, it wouldn't have been forgivable, but keeping silent and then trying to cover it up made me feel betrayed. "Please, no more gambling." Saying that seemed to sour Michael's mood even further. "What's the big deal? I've been losing a bit these past few months, but overall, I'm still ahead, aren't I?" "Quit while you're ahead then." He responded with a sullen face and childish retort, and I scolded him again. After that, Michael was unbearable. "What a boring family. Can't even do what I enjoy." Muttering that, he treated me, who had banned gambling, like an enemy. But I couldn't just sit around and wait until the financial issues affected our lives. The kids were still students. Their education costs money. The relationship between us spouses deteriorated, and Michael probably got bored with our marriage, but divorce wasn't an easy option. Wanting to maintain a harmonious family until the kids were grown, I spent my days trying to appease Michael. Then a happy event occurred in our family. Paul, who had graduated high school and was working, got a girlfriend and introduced her to me. Her name is Mia. She's the same age as Paul, moved from the countryside to work here, and met him through a friend at work. It felt like a fresh breeze had blown into our family, and I welcomed Mia warmly. Your mom's cooking is so delicious. Mia was a lovely girl. She always complimented our meals when we ate together. She even went cafe hopping with Lily, quickly becoming part of our family. Mia also took great care of Michael, being his drinking buddy and listening to his stories, something only she did among us. Michael liked Mia too, saying, if Paul and Mia got married, and she became my daughter-in-law, that'd be great. Of course, I was all for the idea. Paul and Mia were still 20 but seemed to be thinking seriously about their future. Later, they decided to marry when they turned 23. Why wait until 23? I was simply curious. Paul explained. Getting married costs money. I want to give Mia the wedding she dreams of, so we thought we'd save up together until then. I was impressed by his mature thoughts for someone his age. Of course, we had enough savings to afford a wedding for them. But Paul didn't want to rely on us. Instead, he wanted to be the one to support us. I was moved to tears by his sentiment, even though the wedding was still far off. As a sign that Mia had already become part of our family, we decided to refer to her not just as Paul's girlfriend but as his fiancée. However, some time later, Paul told us that Mia was pregnant. I was surprised by the sudden news, especially since they had planned to marry at 23. Pregnant? I don't mind, considering what you two feel, I said to Paul, but his expression remained clouded. Is something wrong? It's just... Mia shouldn't be pregnant. Paul muttered uncomfortably in response to my question. I was puzzled by his statement. Paul added, as if to drive the point home. There's no way I could be the father. I was away on a business trip when she would have gotten pregnant. Paul's anguished cry pierced my heart. Mia had an affair? But she didn't seem like that kind of person. Paul continued. But Mia insists she hasn't cheated. I just don't know what to do. Paul was in despair. Seeing Paul like this, I wanted to talk to Mia and asked Paul if he could arrange a conversation for us. I decided to keep Michael in the dark until things were clearer. Given the delicate nature of the issue, I doubted Michael's involvement would help. But the truth came out in an unexpected way. One evening, Michael was unusually late to dinner. Paul, can you call Dad? I was busy and asked Paul to fetch Michael. Paul went to call him, but neither returned for a while. What's going on? Leaving Lily to finish dinner preparations, I headed to the bedroom. There, I found Paul standing outside the bedroom, pale as a ghost. What happened? Paul gestured for silence, placing his finger over his lips, and as I approached the bedroom door, I could hear Michael's voice. Well, this secures our future. He seemed to be on the phone. Michael's phone conversation was likely with one of the dubious friends he'd met through gambling. I looked at Paul's face. If it was just a phone call, he could have simply come back and said, Dad was on the phone. But judging by his complexion, it was probably not just any call. That became clear with his next words. She threw herself on me and I just couldn't say no. I guess I'm just that popular. But man, young women are the best. Never thought she'd get pregnant so quickly though, but hey, we're still family, right? Not like I plan on taking her away from my son. But we'll probably end up living together, so I'm looking forward to what's lying ahead. At first, I didn't understand, but Paul's pale face made me realize the gravity of the situation. What? You got to be kidding me. Does this mean what I think it means? Paul muttered, not seeking confirmation from anyone. I was left speechless by his words. Afterward, I took Paul and left the house. I couldn't let Michael and Paul meet. Lily looked puzzled, but I asked her to eat with Michael, and we went straight to Mia's place. Paul. Mom. Mia greeted us with a worried face. It seemed the pregnancy had caused a conflict between them. Feeling the tense atmosphere, I spoke up. Mia, I want to hear the truth. Who is the father of the child in your stomach? Then Mia started to cry. She seemed hesitant, but after I promised I won't get mad, no matter what, she slowly began to talk. Actually, it's Paul's dad. Despite my promise not to get angry, I felt a deep rage upon hearing who was involved. On one hand, I couldn't believe what my husband had done, and on the other, how Mia had agreed to it. But I was wrong. I heard Paul is infertile. And if we are going to have children, he would want someone who's related by blood. So Paul's dad suggested that he should be the father, since it wouldn't change the fact that we're family. Both Paul and I were speechless upon hearing this. Of course, that was not true about Paul. Mia just kept crying. What a vile turn of events. Michael had seduced Mia, Paul's fiancée, under false pretenses. Mia was the primary victim in this situation. Any distrust I had towards Mia vanished immediately. It was clear she wasn't lying. Because it's a delicate issue, we thought to keep it from Paul. Michael and I thought staying silent would keep everyone happy. Hearing this, my anger towards Michael nearly exploded. Paul must have felt the same. Unforgivable. That man alone, I will definitely send him down to hell. I nodded in agreement with Paul's words and decided to fully support his plan to bring Michael down. But caring for Mia was our first priority. Both Paul and I apologized deeply to her. She told us not to worry about it, but this wasn't something an apology could fix. I think there's no fault in the child. But please, give me some time to think about what to do. Mia told us her thoughts. Of course, we respected her wishes and asked her to contact us immediately if she needed anything. With that, we left her place. We're home. Ah, you're late. Where were you? Lily and I already ate. When Paul and I returned home, Michael casually remarked as if nothing was wrong. Paul looked like he might attack Michael at any moment, but he restrained himself and put on a smile. Just wanted to have a chat with Mom, you know. I felt sorry for you, being banned from gambling and all. Paul said this with a smile as he approached Michael. Right? You understand, Paul? Can't live without a hobby. Well, I guess you're right. Paul got me thinking, and I've reconsidered. Just don't overspend, okay? Lily was the only one not in on our plan, so her indignation, what? Are you stupid? Only encouraged Michael further. If the whole family suggested it, he'd surely be suspicious. Well, it's 3 against 1. Give it up, Lily. Finally, gambling is back on. As expected, Michael was overjoyed and headed out to gamble the very next day. During his absence, we explained everything to Lily. Predictably, Lily showed more disgust towards Michael than anyone. Unbelievable! I can't stand that he's our dad. Mia deserves so much better, Lily said, crying. And from that day on, Lily joined the plan. The plan was simple. Just let Michael squander his money on gambling. Our family knows Michael's character better than anyone. He would surely start dipping into the living expenses quietly again. That's why I moved all the living expenses and savings to a different account. I thought it would take about 2 months before moving to the next phase of our plan, but Michael's spending was several times faster than expected. In just 3 weeks, he ran out of money and started tapping into the living expenses account, which quickly ran dry too. What are you thinking? This is the second time, you know? With Lily's college fees coming up, what are you going to do? I yelled at Michael. Michael pleaded desperately, I didn't think it would run out so quickly. I'll win it back soon, just lend me $200, no, $100 from the savings. Even though I anticipated this, my anger towards Michael, who had quickly spent all the money, was genuine, not just an act. You haven't learned your lesson at all. What are you even thinking? Tears of frustration and anger came to me, and even Michael seemed taken aback. Always thinking about yourself. I thought I could endure it until the kids were grown, but I can't take it anymore. I slammed the divorce papers down. Michael turned pale at the sight of them. Aren't you overreacting? I was just kidding. He tried to soothe me, but I had no sympathy for Michael. Lily will be under my custody. This house is in your name, so I'll be leaving. Just calm down. It's just gambling. Just gambling? That's just the last straw. I despise everything about you. Michael seemed truly remorseful this time. But that level of remorse was far from sufficient. The divorce between me and Michael was just the first step of our plan. Michael was stubborn to the end, but to that, Paul said, Dad, you said we were a boring family that wouldn't let you do what you wanted, remember? Now you can do whatever you want. You're free. That's true, I guess. Tricked by Paul's encouragement, Michael signed the divorce papers. Upon learning about the separate account for living expenses during the property division, Michael was furious, but I had only safeguarded our money. He had no reason to be angry. That money will also be split in half in the distribution of property, he said arrogantly. You're getting the house. If that's the case, sell the house, and we'll split that money too. Of course, I'm going to sell all the fishing rods, camping equipment, and anything else that might be worth something. But it's only natural, isn't? Michael was at a loss for words. He didn't want to sell the house and, despite having no plans to use them, didn't want to part with his fishing rods either. In the end, I was able to receive all the savings. With that money, Lily and I started living in an apartment. I'm an adult, so I'll stay here, Paul said, seemingly content, but that was just for show. He stayed in the house to report to us how Michael was progressively falling into ruin. Michael's descent into hell was slow, like descending a staircase. Whether it was the stress of the divorce or the freedom of no one nagging him about gambling, he began visiting the gambling dens daily. It had been only on weekends before, but now, losing and coming home after work became his routine. Hey Dad, welcome back. Paul would greet him as if nothing was amiss. I'm home. What am I having for dinner? Nothing. I just got back too. What are you eating then? This? It's the stew Mom made. Paul would flaunt the food I prepared for him right in front of Michael, who ended up eating instant noodles. Michael's envious gaze at Paul's food. Give me a bite. After a while, Michael would always say this, and Paul would refuse with, no way. This exchange continued daily. Then, about a month later, while eating instant noodles, Michael asked Paul, Paul, I'm sorry to ask, but could you chip in for the house expenses? What? You know, utilities and stuff cost money. Michael seemed solemn, but Paul quickly caught on. Ran out of money, haven't you? No, it's not like that. Michael avoided eye contact as he spoke. Paul stood up, looking exasperated. I've been contributing monthly. You've used that up too, haven't you? What? I can't give any more money. If you're still asking for money, then I'll leave. Indeed, Paul had been contributing financially since he started working. Even after we left, he continued to deposit money into the living expenses account. Right, I was wrong. You can stay. Michael desperately tried to keep Paul from leaving. But Paul laughed and said, "But you know, I used to contribute because Mom did all the housework. Now that I think about it, you don't do anything, and I'm the one doing all the housework, right? So, it's only natural for you to cover the utility bills, and I shouldn't have to contribute at all, should I?" At those words, Michael had nothing to say. The house remained clean thanks to Paul. It must be difficult for him to even look at Michael, the person he despises the most. I admire Paul's determination to decisively push Michael further down. "Yeah, you're right." Michael nodded, flustered, but Paul added, "Well, I'm leaving anyway." Paul played Michael perfectly, inflicting sure damage while leaving him disoriented. Michael tried to stop him, but Paul shrugged him off and left him behind. What followed was predictable. Neighbors, unaware that I had left, began to contact me frequently. "The house looks neglected. Are you away? Michael seems really worn down. Is everything all right?" From the messages, I could easily imagine the kind of life Michael was leading. Furthermore, there were reports of scary people are visiting. Should I call the police? I seriously wondered what was going on, but it seems he has borrowed money from a loan shark. That means he really must have no money left. As expected, I received a call from Michael. "Sophia, help me. You're the only one I can turn to now." The only thing Michael was capable of doing was begging for money. I had no intention of helping such a person, but I decided to get in touch. "I have something to discuss with you. I'll come to the house tomorrow." Michael responded, "I'll be waiting," to my message. The next day, I headed to the house. With Paul, Lily, Mia, and a man. 5 of us went to the house. "Oh, everyone came along. I've been waiting." When we rang the doorbell, Michael greeted us with an unsettlingly wide smile. However, his smile vanished upon seeing the man. "May I ask who you are?" The man introduced himself. "Nice to meet you. I'm Smith, a lawyer. I'm here to discuss the damages they've all suffered." "Damages?" "Yes. The infidelity against Sophia, defamation of Paul, and sexual assault against Mia." "What?" Hearing these words, Michael let out a strange noise and turned pale, breaking out in a cold sweat. "Let's talk inside." Actually, something urgent came up. "I'm sorry, but I have to ask you guys to leave now." Noticing our gaze, Michael seemed to finally grasp the situation. In the next moment, he tried to flee. "Don't run!" Paul caught him and said, "I know everything you did. Act like an adult and take responsibility." Subdued by Paul, Michael shrank back. Then it was the lawyer's turn. Michael, unable to argue against Smith's words, just nodded, watched by us with disdain. It goes without saying for Mia. Claiming Paul is infertile and telling his fiancé is defamation that could ruin her life. Please reflect on your actions. We then collectively demanded $100,000 in compensation. Smith explained to Michael the breakdown and its amount. "I can't possibly pay that," Michael pleaded to Smith and the others. That's when Lily said, "Can't you cover that by selling this house?" We're going to make sure you pay." Michael has no money left. He's even resorted to borrowing. Selling the house seemed his only option. Michael's wailing and apologies were repulsive. But forgiveness was out of the question. Disgusting. Lily looked at Michael with disdain, as if looking at trash, and Paul also showed his disgust. "Just pay up. And don't ever come near us again. If you can't do that, we're prepared to take legal action over what happened to Mia." We left Michael crying alone in the cluttered, filthy house and went home. Eventually, Michael sold the house. He used the money to pay us and to repay the loan shark, as Smith informed us. But now he had no home and no money to rent an apartment. No one was willing to help him. Not even his gambling friends seemed close enough to lend a hand. He's been living in an internet cafe, subsisting on his advance salary from work. How long can such a life last? It seems like he might end up homeless if this continues. We thought Paul's plan had brought Michael down, but on reflection, Michael seemed to have brought himself down. He will likely fade away, forgotten by our family, and end his life alone and unnoticed. Mia and Paul got married. The child is innocent. I can't let Mia suffer anymore, Paul declared, accepting Mia's child as his own. The amount of internal struggle he must have faced to make that decision. Mia, Lily, and I all cried, but Paul was the only one smiling. Mia gave birth to a healthy girl. Doesn't she look like Mom? Lily was the first to say so, seeing the resemblance to me. And Paul looks like me. If the baby looks like me then, and so we had a DNA test and it revealed the child was indeed Paul's. It seemed there had been a mix-up with the due dates. Mia, Lily, and I cried. But Paul, who had been holding back, cried the most. I'll make sure they're happy. Both Mia and this child. Paul made that promise. His next plan was truly wonderful. And I intend to support it fully. Get out of the way, you're blocking the pregnant lady, Abigail said, gently stroking her belly. Her face held a mean-spirited expression that made you wonder, shouldn't pregnant women have a more gentle demeanor? I looked over at my husband, Daniel. Go sleep in the storage room. He chimed in, echoing Abigail. Watching Daniel side with Abigail, my love for him cooled off. Yet, a part of me still felt a pang of sadness. All right then, I replied. Daniel happily took Abigail's hand in response. Abigail gazed back at him, utterly smitten. The sight of them together washed away my melancholy, replacing it with a rising anger from within. I'll be out by tomorrow. Sure. Oh, why don't you find somewhere else to stay tonight? This is mine and Abigail's house now, Daniel said, elated. I nodded slightly and left the house. They won't be laughing for long. Leaving the house, I allowed myself a smile, imagining what comes next. My name is Grace. A 46-year-old housewife. Before marriage, I worked hard, but that was over 20 years ago. Now, I enjoy my days doing household chores and savoring coffee, just an ordinary middle-aged lady. My hobby is investing, which I've done since before I got married, recently enjoying significant dividends that allow for luxury hotel lunches and spa visits. Daniel, 43, is a salesman for a major company. He's definitely put on some weight, and honestly, his scent has become rather strong recently, but as a salesman at the top of his game, he sure has a way with words. Despite looking like a big, burly guy, I've always loved him. I've thought about encouraging him to lose some weight for his health, but there's a certain adorable quality to him that made me think maybe it wasn't necessary. We have a daughter together, Scarlett. Scarlett has inherited Daniel's facial features, and being slim, she has the beauty of a model. Not just in looks, but academically and athletically, she excels, bringing home top grades and being selected for national competitions, all while being humble and hardworking. Both Daniel and I dote on her, often to the point where others say we're overprotective. Daniel has a bit of a weakness for younger women, but he chose me, an older woman, and has always prioritized our family, so I've come to accept his occasional wandering eye. We lived in a second-hand apartment bought around the time Scarlett was born, which has been aging, leading to discussions about increasing the maintenance fees. Amidst this, Scarlett decided to do room sharing near her university. At the same time, my relatives offered us an uninhabited house to inherit, prompting Daniel and me to decide on rebuilding it and moving in. Little did I know that this move would lead to such a turn of events with Daniel. While our old apartment had 4 rooms, our new home has only 2. It's smaller than before, but designing it as a single-story home considering our elder years has made it very comfortable. One of the 2 rooms, a combined study and guest room, can be divided into Scarlett's room and a study, making 3 rooms if she comes back. Since moving, Daniel's nights have become late due to work engagements, and he often finds excuses to go out on weekends. Being sensitive to smells, sleeping next to Daniel, who reeks of alcohol and tobacco, has been a challenge even with separate beds. Thus, despite having a shared bedroom, I've been sleeping in the study since we moved into the new house. When it came time to send out moving announcements, I took the initiative, sending letters far and wide. Daniel isn't great with these sorts of things, so I handled sending letters to the in-laws' house and his relatives on his behalf. Since both my parents have passed away, I only sent brief notices to relatives and friends on my mom's side. I haven't kept in touch with anyone from my dad's side of the family. And that's largely due to my sister, Abigail. Abigail is my half-sister, 14 years younger than me. She was born to my dad's second wife shortly after my mom died when I was in my first year of middle school. Abigail was already 2 years old when they remarried, so I initially thought it was a marriage where both parties already had children. My dad passed away in an accident along with his second wife about 5 years after they got remarried. At the funeral, relatives on my dad's side mentioned that he and his second wife had been childhood sweethearts, and everyone had expected them to marry. They blamed my mom for coming between them, saying she proposed marriage through her company connections, leaving no choice for my dad but to marry her, casting his second wife into the shadows. Despite my memories of my parents being happy, it turns out my dad had a child with his second wife behind the scenes. That revelation shocked me more than anything. At the relative's house, Abigail's favorite foods were always served. She wore brand clothes, had the biggest room to herself, and was taken to any place she wanted immediately. In contrast, I was burdened with preparing meals, doing laundry, cleaning, had my part-time earnings taken away, and my room was a small storage space under the stairs, where I was begrudgingly provided with the bare minimum after asking. By the time Abigail reached the middle grades of elementary school, she had learned about my mom from relatives and had come to look down on me. I had to juggle multiple part-time jobs to finally move out of that house. With such experiences, it's no wonder I harbored no fond feelings for Abigail, and I hadn't told her about my marriage or having a child. A few weeks after moving in, I was enjoying a coffee when the doorbell rang. A man's voice said, "Delivery." The screen showed someone looking down. Wondering if Daniel had ordered something, I opened the door. And I was surprised by the person who was there. "Abigail? What are you doing here?" "It's been a while, sis. I just showed up." The person in front of me was indeed wearing the hat seen on the doorbell camera, but it wasn't a delivery person, it was my sister, Abigail. Abigail slipped past me, frozen in shock, and made herself comfortable on the sofa in the living room. I hurried after her and stood towering in front of her, looking down. "If you knew it was me, you wouldn't let me in, right? That's why I used a recorded voice from before. That's awful, deceiving me like that. Oh, scary." Abigail feigned fear at my raised voice. But it was clear she was acting, evidenced by her smiling face. "I've come back home." "What?" Confused by Abigail's nonsensical remark, I responded coldly. With a bright smile, Abigail began to explain her sudden visit. "Well, you never tell me where you are. I got married, but my husband's always on business trips, and it's boring. And when you get pregnant, it becomes harder to move around, right? Everyone said I should come and have you take care of me. Go back." I have no intention of dealing with you, let alone take care of you. But I've already come here planning to have you look after me, so it's impossible. I was frustrated with Abigail's unapologetic attitude. Hearing her mutter, "Thief's daughter," under her breath, my anger reached its peak. Get out! I never want to see your face again. What's all the noise about? It can be heard from outside. Daniel, Surprised by Daniel's unexpected return, I was at a loss for words when Abigail stood up and went over to him. Then she wrapped her arm around Daniel's. Daniel didn't shrug her off and seemed pleased with her presence. Oh, Abigail's here? Welcome. Daniel, sis is being mean. I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to stay with Daniel until the baby is born, but is that not okay? That's great. If you don't mind, you're welcome to stay as long as you like. I was stunned by the conversation between Daniel and Abigail. Not only that, but Abigail was clinging to Daniel, their proximity resembling that of lovers. Daniel, what's this all about? You see, Abigail's had it tough, hasn't she? Why be so harsh? Jealous of your cute sister? I felt despair at Daniel's words. I had told Daniel about my family situation before we got married. Yet, he said such things. Look, you're not using your bed in the bedroom anyway, so it should be fine, right? Really? I can sleep in the same room with you, Daniel? Sleeping next to you sounds like it'd bring sweet dreams. Daniel, really? Their conversation, like that of a close couple, gave me a headache. Ignoring me, the two of them went to the bedroom, still arm in arm, to put away their luggage. However, when they didn't return after a few minutes, a bad feeling led me to peek into the bedroom. There, I found them embracing each other. Living with you feels like a dream come true. The baby's happy, too. To live with Dad. Abigail's words filled me with despair. Daniel is Dad? What does that mean? Daniel, looking pleased, nodded while embracing Abigail. We should leave the sister to babysit and go on a date. She's only good for that. I watched them kiss through the tears, peeking through the door gap. From that day on, they treated me like a housekeeper. While obeying them, I began to gather evidence little by little. I discovered more shocking truths about our household, leading me to consider divorce. One day, Abigail, sitting on my favorite sofa, summoned me. She spoke as if she owned the place. Get out of the way, I'm pregnant. Abigail said, gently rubbing her belly. Shouldn't pregnant women look more compassionate? Abigail's face was filled with malice. I looked at Daniel. You should sleep in the warehouse, he said, agreeing with Abigail. Seeing Daniel side with her, my love faded. Still, I felt a bit sentimental. All right then. Daniel happily took Abigail's hand in response. Abigail looked at Daniel adoringly. At that moment, my sentimental feelings vanished, replaced by anger from the bottom of my heart. I'll be out by tomorrow. Yeah. Oh, why don't you find somewhere else to stay tonight? This place is now mine and Abigail's. I nodded slightly and left the house, thinking they won't be laughing for long. After leaving, I smiled, imagining what comes next. I stayed in a hotel, planning my next steps. I arranged for movers to come the next day and planned to go to the office early before heading home. Excited about the future, I had trouble falling asleep that night, but feeling liberated, my heart felt lighter. The next day, I went as planned to get the divorce papers and headed home. The movers were already there, looking confused. They said the house was empty when they arrived, with just one cardboard box left at the entrance. At the entrance was indeed a small cardboard box with a note saying, "Please take whatever you want." Inside were my treasured books and cosmetics tossed carelessly, with books damaged and pages torn. At the very back was Daniel's wedding ring, fueling my rage. Entering the house, I found the bedroom in disarray with sheets, pajamas, and underwear scattered about, making it clear what had happened after I left. "Please take all of these items," I said, closing the bedroom door and leading the movers to the study. Daniel doesn't read, so the study was filled with books collected by me and Scarlett. Since I only had a few outfits to begin with, I decided to take this opportunity to buy new ones. When I entered the living room, I found a letter on the dining table. The letter mentioned that Daniel and his companion were going on a prenatal trip abroad for 5 nights and 6 days. It instructed me to keep the house clean during their absence and to prepare for the divorce immediately upon their return. I was dumbfounded by their selfishness. However, this made my plan much easier to execute, so I secretly thanked them in my heart. After having the movers take all my belongings, I removed my wedding ring and left it in the kitchen. Leaving the ring behind, I exited my home. I debated over where to move but ended up buying a place near Scarlett's university that happened to be for sale. The new house was very comfortable, and I enjoyed my solitude for the first time in a while. On the day of their return, my mobile phone kept ringing incessantly. I knew who it was without even looking at the screen. Without diverting my eyes from the book I was reading, I answered the call. "Yes, yes." "What the hell is this about?" Daniel blurted out without any greeting, his voice frantic. The reason was clear, but I responded casually. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb. The house is gone." I couldn't help but laugh out loud at Daniel's statement, hearing him panic on the other end. After my laughter subsided, I replied to Daniel. "Why?" "Well, it's my house, so if I'm not living there, I don't need it, right?" "We were living there." "What about our stuff?" "Don't worry. I've kept everything as is in a storage unit. I'll send you the location and the pin in a message." "Don't mess around. Bring everything back now. Give us our house back." "That's funny. The land and the house are in my name. I used the money I made from investments to build it, not a dime from you." It seemed Daniel finally remembered the circumstances under which the house was built. When we were deciding whether to remodel or rebuild, Daniel said he had no money and told me to do whatever I wanted with my own money. So, I took care of everything from the paperwork to the payments, building the house to my liking. But Daniel, seduced by Abigail, had completely forgotten about that. "Please, it's for your niece or nephew that's about to be born. Find us a house. It's unfair to Abigail." "My niece or nephew?" "I'd love to meet someone who can adore the child of the husband who cheated on them." "What are you saying? Did you think I wouldn't notice?" Daniel had believed he hadn't been caught, but his confident demeanor quickly changed. I pressed on. "I've been aware of your affair with Abigail since the day she barged into our house, and I've been collecting evidence since then." "Evidence?" "The baby camera Abigail had me buy. It's been recording." "You didn't notice, did you?" Daniel let out a small sound. The baby camera was the first thing Abigail demanded when she settled in. She had already done her homework and requested a high-end camera that costs $1,000. Of course, I initially refused, but after being yelled at by Daniel, I reluctantly bought it. However, the camera setup was left entirely to others, and neither Daniel nor Abigail had touched the camera since its purchase. So, I secretly activated it, capturing everything in the bedroom. True to its price, it even captures clear images in the dark, including both of you in bed and what you were doing under the covers. Snooping around like that is in poor taste. I was merely testing the capabilities of the baby camera. Still better than a man who cheats with his wife's sister, I'd say. Daniel seemed unable to respond. To Daniel, I cheerfully said, "Oh, And I think I left the mailbox untouched, so you might want to check that. The mailbox? Yes, it should have arrived by now. I could hear Daniel checking the mailbox over the phone. Then, the next moment, I heard his surprised voice. Oh, good. It looks like it arrived, the certified mail. Make sure you take care of the payment, okay? Hey, there's one for Abigail too. Are you going to leech off your sister? What are you talking about? You two betrayed me, so this is a compensation claim. Family or not, it doesn't matter. But no excuses. We'll go through lawyers from here on out. Bye. Wait, Grace. I hung up, ignoring Daniel's call. My phone kept ringing off the hook, but I ignored it. I had already signed up for a new mobile phone over these 5 days, so the old one was just for keeping evidence. Ignoring it caused no problems. Daniel kept calling for about an hour but eventually gave up. He seems to have complained to the lawyer, who later reported to me with a tired voice. The next morning, I got a call on my mobile phone from Dad's side of the family. Since I hadn't given them my contact information, it was probably Abigail who had whined to them, planning to scold me. Reluctantly, I answered the call while recording it on my new phone. Yes? How could you throw out a pregnant Abigail like that? Apologize to her immediately and provide a new house as compensation. Why should I apologize to a woman who slept with my husband? Whatever Abigail has told you, she should be the one to apologize. And she should be the one to pay compensation. This is why the daughter of a thief. Right. Just like the child of a dad who betrayed mom and had a child with his affair partner. You end up with someone weak-minded enough to sleep with her half-sister's husband, growing up just as poorly. Oh, and please tell Abigail to stay away from me from now on. Though, I doubt she'll have the luxury to do so. The relative was still complaining, but I hung up. Feeling surprisingly refreshed after venting everything I had been holding back. I contacted the lawyer to summon Abigail and Daniel. I wouldn't close this chapter of revenge until I saw their frustrated faces. The meeting at the law office then took place. Before me were Abigail, looking sulky, and Daniel, appearing disgruntled. It seemed they hadn't learned their lesson even after all that had been said. I never thought my sister would turn out to be such a miser. I'm shocked. If I knew she was so greedy, I wouldn't have married her. I was deceived. Hearing Abigail and Daniel's self-centered comments, I moved beyond anger to sheer disbelief. I laid the divorce papers in front of them and also presented another document, a marriage registration form. As for the compensation, I might consider reducing it if you sign this. If signing this is all it takes to reduce the amount, then give it here, Daniel said, snatching the pen from me to sign. Abigail also signed, laughing. I put the documents in a file and then smiled brightly. I'll make sure to submit this to the office. Did you forget, sis? I'm already married. It won't be accepted anyway. Well, don't worry. You're single now. Huh? Abigail looked at me with a dumbfounded expression. I rephrased it for her, making it easier to understand. Yesterday, the divorce mediation finalized our divorce. I didn't know about that. Well, you threw away the mail without checking it. There were several letters, orders to appear in court. I got a message from your husband saying the divorce was finalized and now he's filing to deny paternity of the child. That can't be. While Abigail stood there dumbfounded, Daniel seemed oddly pleased. No wonder, since he could marry Abigail until after her remarriage prohibition period ends. To Daniel, who seemed quite content, I smiled sweetly. It must be tough for you, having to support a child that isn't yours. What? The child in her belly is mine. Oh, you didn't know? Poor thing. The child Abigail is carrying is actually from her real boyfriend at the club. Club guy? When Daniel turned to Abigail with force, she awkwardly looked away, indicating my statement was true. Seeing this, Daniel's face turned pale, realizing the truth. Good luck with the compensation payment and raising someone else's child. I know it'll be tough. Grace, let's start over. I was wrong. After all, there's Scarlett. As Daniel changed his tune, the door to the lawyer's office burst open, and a woman walked in. Daniel turned pale the moment he saw her. Scarlett? Dad, you're the worst. Hurting Mom like that. I'm cutting ties with you. From now on, I'll live with Mom. You and that loose woman can just disappear. Scarlett had never spoken so harshly before, leaving Daniel frozen in shock. Meanwhile, Abigail, insulted, was red-faced and trembling. Who are you calling loose? Sleeping with someone other than your husband, then my husband, and also your real boyfriend from the club. Which part of that isn't loose? Are you insane? Scarlett's fierceness left Abigail speechless. I delivered the final blow to Abigail. Just so you know, he's frugal but never manages to save money because he spends it all on young women, so be careful. What? But what about the house, the car? Oh, those? All mine. Bought with my dividend income. We used them as a married couple, but after the divorce, we're strangers. A man with a $3,000 salary couldn't afford that car anyway. $3,000? Even though he works for a big company? Apparently motivated by money, Abigail was frozen in shock. Daniel, too, was looking down, embarrassed by the revelation of his low salary. Well, good luck with everything. I said that and left with Scarlett, entrusting the rest to the lawyer. The dinner I had with Scarlett that night was genuinely enjoyable and delicious, the best we had in a long time. Later, I filed the divorce papers. When Abigail's remarriage prohibition period ended, I also submitted Daniel and Abigail's marriage registration. The witness section was signed by me and Abigail's ex-husband. Daniel was fired for repeatedly cheating with Abigail during work hours and misappropriating travel expenses for their affairs. Now he's struggling, working part-time jobs to make ends meet. Abigail seems to be taking care of the child but cries daily, having been dumped by her club boyfriend once the money ran out, unable to tolerate her unbearable personality. Abigail admitted she targeted Daniel because she couldn't stand that I got married and had a child before she did, wanting to ruin it. She thought she could get money from both her ex-husband and Daniel by claiming the child was Daniel's and leave the care to me while she visited her club boyfriend. After all this, even her relatives have abandoned her, forcing her to reluctantly take up part-time work, which didn't last long due to her attitude. Now, she, Daniel, and the baby live cramped together, barely scraping by. Scarlett is enjoying her university life. I was surprised to learn her roommate was her same-sex partner, but seeing Scarlett happy made me think it was all right. As for me, I continue to live off my dividend income. After the divorce, I've been in touch more with Abigail's ex-husband, who's been asking me out to dinner. It seems that Abigail and her ex-husband were married through their parents' introduction, pushed heavily by Abigail herself, I later learned. Yet, I wonder why she was dissatisfied with him, to the point of curiosity. I received a message from him earlier on my mobile phone, saying he has something important to discuss, making me feel somewhat restless today. Despite telling myself not to expect too much, my face blushed like that of a girl in love as I sat in front of the dresser, applying makeup.